Hello guys, welcome back to this amazing lesson. In this lesson, we'll be discussing integrating Python, SQL, and Batch in Airflow workflow. Modern data pipelines often need to extract, transform, and load, that's ETL, data from multiple sources and run different tasks automatically. Our Apache Airflow is a workflow orchestration tool that allows us to define these tasks as as DAG, that's the directed acrylic graph. So in this lesson now, we will learn how to integrate Python scripts, SQL queries, and batch command into a single Airflow workflow. Automate tasks such as data extraction, transformation, loading, and reporting. Monitor our task execution and handle task dependencies. Now, before we proceed, let's actually see some terms under this integrating Python, SQL, and batch in Airflow workflow. We have the DAG. We are actually familiar with this now. That's directed acrylic graph. So a workflow structure where each task has a defined order and no cycles actually exist. We have the task is a single unit of work in a DAG, such as running a Python script, SQL query, or batch command. And for the operator now, is the template in Airflow for defining tasks. For instance now, Python operator, the batch operator, and the SQL operator. And for the XCOM now, which is the cross communication. I actually emphasized on this in the previous lesson. Now, is a mechanism to pass data between tasks in Airflow. From the extract data, which is the Python operator, to the transform data, that's still under the Python operator. Now load to CSV, still under the Python operator. Now when we load it back to a CSV, now we actually make use of the Python operator now. So what we are trying to say is that we load it back into a storage now, like the PostgreSQL now. So we load our data into there, and it will be in a CSV format through the Python operator. Now when we now load it to the storage now, that's where we can actually run our SQL query using the SQL operator. From there into the batch command, that's where we can actually verify it. Now the next thing is, I want to actually solve this question and making use of these procedures that we've listed earlier. Now let me bring my cursor down. Now this question says a retail company want to automate daily monitoring of all product sales transaction across its branches. Currently, data analysts manually download sales record from multiple systems, clean them, and summarize them for the management. Now, the management now wants the data to be automatically extracted, cleaned, and stored daily. Now, the ability to integrate SQL queries and Python scripts in the same workflow to process and validate data. Also, a batch command to verify that the process file exists before the workflow complete. Now let's actually solve this question now. So we'll now make use of how we can integrate with our Python, SQL, and and the batch workflow. Now the first thing I will be doing is that we'll be making use of the extract process. Now let me just come here and name this extract. Extract. Now I'll bring my cursor down, I'll hit on the markdown. Now I will now turn this. Okay, now let's continue. The first thing I'll be doing, I'll now say import pandas as as pd. I'll hit on enter. I will now say dev. Now extract. Now underscore data, open parenthesis, let's say file underscore path, close this parenthesis. I'll give it double column. I'll hit on enter. I will now say try. Now double column, what are we trying now? I'll hit on enter. I'll now say df equals pd. Now dot read. What are we reading now? Is a CSV file. I'll now say underscore CSV, open parenthesis, file underscore path. Now close this parenthesis, hit on enter. I will now print. Now print, open parenthesis, double quote, let's say data extracted successfully. Now I will now put a full stop. I'll close double quote, close this what parenthesis, I'll hit on enter. Now the next thing I'll now say return. Now we'll now return the df, which is this. Now let me bring my cursor down. Now it will return this word, this df earlier. That's, it will return it as a csv file. Now hit on enter. I'll now come back here and I'll say except exception. That means if you have an error, except exception, I'll give it an alias of e. I'll now what? Give it double column. I'll hit on enter. The next thing I'll now print. Now print, what are we printing? Open parenthesis, f string. Now error, or let me just say error. Now extracted, error extracted, or error extracting. Let's say extracting data, double column. Now open this nested JSON. Now close it. Now I will now close double quote, close this parenthesis. I'll hit on enter. I will now return. Now what's it returning now? None. Now that's how it's supposed to be. I will now hit on enter. Now I want to use what? The save what location for the data set now. So to do that, I'll hit on enter once again. I'll now come back here. I'll now say file underscore path. Now equals what? Now I'll go to my desktop. I'll bring out the what? I'll copy the link as path. I will now what? Paste it here now. Now I will now paste the link here now. I'll paste it. I'll give it a raw string here. Now I will now bring my cursor here. Hit on enter. Now the next thing I will now do now, just say let's name this raw underscore data. Now equals what? Extract underscore data. Now open parenthesis, that's file underscore path. Now close this. I'll hit on enter. I will now hit on enter once again. I'll now say if raw underscore data now is not null. Now I'll put a double column. I'll hit on enter. Now print. What are we printing now? Open parenthesis, raw underscore data. Now dot head. Now open parenthesis. Now let's hit 10. Close these two parentheses. Now let me bring my cursor down. I will now hit on enter. I want to print again. Print. You can actually bring out the shape of it. Now let's say double quote. I'll give it a forward slash. I'll now say end what? End shape of the data set now. Now open parenthesis. That will be row, rows, comma, and I want to see the columns also. Columns. Now close this parenthesis. Give it double column. I will now say raw underscore data. Now dot shape. Now close this. Now I will now hit on enter. I will now print again. Let's say print. Now open parenthesis, double quote. I'll now give it a what? A forward slash again. I will now say end shape. Sorry, end columns. Now I'll what? Give it double column. I'll close double quote. I will now put a comma. I'll now say raw underscore what? Underscore data. Now dot columns. Now dot columns dot to list. Open parenthesis, close two parentheses. Now I will now run this now. Bring my cursor down now so that we can see everything perfectly well. So you can see now we have what? 10 rows, 32 columns. Now for the shape now we have rows and column now. So these are the rows that we actually have. 150,000 and why what? 32 columns. Now these are the columns names that we actually have. Now let me bring my cursor down so you can see everything now. So we have other ID, other date, date time, status, ID, Now customer name, customer email, segment what, and so on and so forth. And these are the what, these are the columns and the what and the values that we actually have. Now let me just take my cursor up a bit now so you can see everything now. So data extracted what successfully. Now the next thing we'll now be doing is that we'll be carrying out our what, our transformation. Now let me just come here and just say double column what, transform. Now we are transforming the data now. Now I'll now come here, I'll just turn this to what, to markdown. I'll bring my cursor here, I will now run this now, control enter. Now let's continue. Now let's transform it now. To transform it, I'll now say import pandas as pd. I'll hit on enter. I will now say dev. Now transform underscore data. Now open parenthesis. The df now, I'll close it. I'll close it with double column. I'll hit on enter. I will now say try double column. What are we trying now? Now the first thing that we want to actually transform is what? I want to normalize the column names. Now to do that now say df dot columns now equals, open this list parenthesis now say c dot what, stripe. Now open this parenthesis, close it. I'll now say dot lower, open parenthesis, close parenthesis, for c. Now that's for column, that's, we gave it an alias of c in df. That's what we actually titled it here, df dot what, dot columns. Now close this what, this list parenthesis. I will now hit on enter. I'm actually done with that. Now the next thing I want to do now, I want to cast what, the integer columns now. Now to cast the integer columns, let's say int underscore what, underscore columns. Now equals what are the columns that I actually want to cast now? Now bring out this list and now say double quote. And now say order, those are the columns now, underscore id, close double quote. I'll put a comma. I'll now say double quote, customer underscore id. I'll close double quote. I'll put a comma. Now double quote, product underscore id. Now close double quote. I'll put a comma. The next one will now be double quote, quantity under double quote. I will now close this parenthesis now. I'll hit on enter. I will now say for column in int underscore what, underscore columns. Now give it double column. I'll hit on enter. I will now say if column in df dot columns. I'm referring to this now, dot columns. Now I'll give you double column. I'll hit on enter. I will now say df. Now open this parenthesis, column. I'm referring to a single column now. I'll close this parenthesis. I will now say pd dot to underscore. That's what I actually want to convert it to now. Now when we are trying to cast now, that means we are trying to what, convert it to, that's what we are trying to do. Now pd to underscore what, numeric. That means I'm trying to what, cast them to numeric data type. So it was actually a what, integer data type before, so we are trying to cast it to a what, numeric data type. Now open this parenthesis, df, open this parenthesis again. Now say column. Sorry, I'm making use of this list. Now column, close this. I'll put a comma. I'll now say errors equals what, double quote, queries. Now close double quote. I'll close this parenthesis. I'll now say dot as type. Now open this parenthesis, close double quote, int 64. Now I'll now close double quote. I'll close this parenthesis now. I'll now hit on enter. Now the next thing I want to actually do now, I want to cast the numeric now. I want to cast the numeric for the what money and the percentage now columns. I will now hit on enter. I will now come back here. I will now say, let's name this what number underscore columns. Now equals, open this list. I'll hit on enter. I'll hit on the tab button once. I will now say double quote unit underscore what underscore price. These are the columns I want to make use of here. Close double quote. I'll put a comma. Now double quote. So I'm trying to refer to the what the columns that deals with what that deals with money and what percent. Now discount underscore what percent. Now close double quote. I'll put a comma. The next one now will be tax underscore rate underscore percent. Now close double quote. I'll put a comma. I'll hit on enter. I'll hit on the tab button. Close, open double quote, cross underscore amount. Now close double quote. I'll put a comma. I'll open double quote. I'll now say net underscore what amount. Now close double quote. I'll put a comma. And I'll say open double quote shipping underscore cost. Close double quote. I'll put a comma. I'll open double quote again. I will now say total underscore amount. Now close double quote. I will now hit on enter. I'll close this what this parenthesis I opened earlier now. Now the next thing I will now do now, I will hit on enter again. I will now say for column in, that will now be what number underscore what underscore columns. I'll now give it double column. I'll hit on enter. I'll now say if column in df dot what. Now I'm referring to this now dot columns. Now I will now give it double column here. I will now hit on enter. Now the next thing I will now say df, open this what parenthesis, and now say column. I'll close this now. I will now say equals what pd dot to underscore numeric Now open this parenthesis. I'll now say df. Now open this what list. I'll now say column. I'll close this now. I'll put a comma. I'll now say errors equals what double quote coerce. Now close double quote, close this parenthesis. Now I will now hit on enter. Now let me bring my cursor down very well. Now let's continue. Now the next thing I want to transform is I want to actually work on the date column. Now I want it in a, it should give us a date and what timestamp. Now to do that, now I will now come back here. I will now say if, now double quote order underscore date, close double quote. I will now say in df dot what dot columns. Now give it double column, hit on enter. I now say df. Now open this parenthesis. I will now say double quote order underscore what underscore date. Now close double quote. I'll close this parenthesis. I'll now say equals what pd dot to underscore date time. Now open parenthesis df. Now what are we actually working on? Which column is that? I'll bring out this now, double quotes. I'll now bring out the order underscore date. Now I'll now close double quote, close this parenthesis. I'll put a comma. I'll now say errors. Now equals what double quote coerce. Now I'll now close this double quote. Now I'll close this parenthesis. I'll now say dot dt dot what dot date. Now I will now hit on enter. Now the next thing I will now do now, I'll now come back here and I'll say if double quote order underscore date now time order underscore date time. I'll close this double quote. I'll now say in df dot what dot columns. In df dot column, give it double column. I'll hit on enter. I'll now say df. Now open this what parenthesis and I'll say double quote order underscore what underscore date time. Now order underscore date time. I'll close this parenthesis. I'll now say equals what pd dot what dot to underscore date time date and time. Now open this parenthesis. I'll now say df. Now open this list parenthesis. Now say double quote. I'll now say double quote order underscore date time order underscore date time. Now I'll close this. Now I'll close this parenthesis. I'll now put a comma. Now let me check. It seems something is not correct here. Okay, I didn't actually put double quote here. Now that's why this one is not actually changing in color. Now sorry about that. Now error. Now errors equals now queries. Now I'll now close double quote. Now I'll come here. I'll open double quote for it. Now I'll now come back here. I'll close this parenthesis. Now I'll now hit on enter. Now I'll come back here. Now the next thing I actually want to do is I'll now bring out for the deliver underscore date. Now if now double quote delivered underscore what underscore date. Now I'll close double quote and I'll say in df dot what dot columns. Now I'll give you double column. I'll hit on enter and I'll say df. Now open this parenthesis. I'll now say double quote say delivered now underscore date. Now close double quote, close this parenthesis and now say equals what pd dot to underscore date time. Now open parenthesis and now say df. Now open this list. Now I will now say double quote. I'll now bring out the word delivered. That's the column we are working on. Underscore date. Close double quote. Now close this parenthesis. Now I'll put a comma and now say errors equals what double quote queries. Now close double quote. Now close this parenthesis. I will now what I'll hit on enter. Now the next thing I want to do is that I want to actually make use of boolean data type for the what for the is underscore first underscore order and also for is underscore refund and also is underscore I underscore value. Now let's actually see how we can actually do that. Now I will now come back here. Let me just come here. Now let's continue to make use of the boolean. Now say bool underscore what underscore column. Now bool underscore column now equals what. Now I'll bring out this list what parenthesis. Now say double quote is underscore what is underscore first underscore order. Now close this parenthesis and sorry, I'll close this double quote. I'll now bring out another one. Now is underscore refunded. Now close double quote, put a comma. I'll open the double quote again and I'll say is underscore I underscore value. Now I'll close double quote. I'll close this parenthesis. I'll now hit on enter. I'll now say for column in bool now underscore columns. I'll hit on double column, I'll hit on enter. I'll now say if what column in, don't forget that will be df dot what dot columns. Now I'll give you double column, I'll hit on enter. I will now say let's give this an alias of s equals what. Now df, now open this parenthesis, now say column, close this parenthesis. I will now say dot as type, open parenthesis, double quote, string. Now I'll close double quote. Now I will now close this parenthesis. I will now say dot stripe. Now open parenthesis, close parenthesis. I will now say dot stair dot lower. Now open parenthesis, close parenthesis. Now let me bring my cursor down. Now bring my cursor here. Let's hit on enter. Now I'll now say df. Now open this what list parenthesis. Now I'll now say column, close it. I'll now say equals what s dot what dot map. Now open this parenthesis. I'll now bring out the what this nested JSON, and I'll give you double quote 1. Now close this double quote. I will now say double column. Now true, double column true. I'll put a comma. I will now say double quote. Now 0. Now close double quote. I'll give you double column. I'll now say false. Now put a comma. Now double quote true. Now close double quote. I'll close double column. I'll now say true again. I'll put a comma. I will now say what double quote false. I'll close this. Now I'll close this double column. I'll now say false. Now I'll close this nested JSON. I'll now close this parenthesis, and I'll say what dot as type. Now open parenthesis, what boolean. Now close this. Now I will now hit on enter. Now the next thing I will now do, I want to actually clean the text column. Now how will I clean the text column? Now probably we have what unnecessary spacing. Now I will now trim out those space. Now that's what I actually want to do next. Now I will now come here. Let me just come back here again. This must actually be in line properly. Now name this was, let's say text underscore what underscore columns. Now equals what this what parenthesis. Now or this list. I'll hit on enter. I'll now say double quote order underscore status. Now close double quote. I'll put a comma. I'll open double quote. I'll now say customer underscore name. Now close double quote. I'll put a comma, and now open double quote again. I'll now say customer underscore email. Now close double quote. I'll put a comma. I'll now say double quote customer underscore segment. Now close double quote, put a comma. I'll hit on enter. Now the next thing I'll now do, I'll now say double quote. I'll bring out the remaining columns. Customer underscore country. Close double quote, put a comma. Now the next one is what customer underscore city. Now close double quote, put a comma. Now the next one is what product underscore category. Now close double quote. I'll put a comma. I'll hit on enter. The next one double quote. That will now be what product underscore subcategory. Now close double quote, put a comma. Now the next one will now be product name. product underscore name. Now close double quote, put a comma. Now the next one is what? Double quote, payment underscore what? Underscore method. Now close double quote, put a comma, hit on enter. Now the next one is what? Payment underscore status. Now payment underscore status, close double quote, put a comma. Now the next one is what? Sales underscore channel. Sales underscore channel. Now close double quote. Now put a comma. The next one is what? Shipping underscore method. Shipping underscore method. Now close double quote, put a comma, hit on enter. Double quote, currency. Now close double quote, put a comma. Now open double quote, promo underscore code. Now close double quote. Now I will now hit on enter. I will come here. I will now close this parenthesis I opened earlier. Now I will now hit on enter. Now I will come here. I will now say for column in what? In text underscore columns. I'll give you double column. I will now hit on enter. I will now say if. Now let me bring my cursor down a bit. Now let's continue. I will now say if column in columns. Now I will now give you the what? Sorry, this should be df. df dot what? Columns in columns. Now I will now give you double column. I'll hit on enter. I will now say df. Now I'll bring out the column. I'll close this. I'll now say equals for df. Now open this parenthesis, the column, close this. Now I will now say dot what? As type. Now open parenthesis, double quote, and now say string. Now close double quote, close this parenthesis, and now say dot str. Now dot strip. Now open parenthesis, close parenthesis. I'll hit on enter. Now the next what transformation I want to actually do is that I want to drop record without order underscore id. So that's the next thing I actually want to do. Now come back here. So this will be what really important for the PostgreSQL now, to keep the primary key later. Now to do that, I will now say before what? Equals length, open parenthesis, df, close this. I will now hit on enter. I'll hit on the tab button. I'll come back here. I will now say if. Now double quote, order underscore id. Now close double quote. Now and now say in df dot what? Dot columns. Now I'll give you double column. I'll hit on enter. I'll now say now df equals what? df. Now open this parenthesis. Open this parenthesis. I'll now say df. Now df, open this what? Parenthesis. I'll now say double quote. I'll now bring out the what? Order underscore id. Now close double quote. I'll close this list parenthesis. Now say dot not what? na. Now open parenthesis, close it, close this what? Parenthesis. And now say dot copy. Open parenthesis, close parenthesis. Now I will now hit on enter. I'll come back here. And I'll come back here and I'll say dropped. Now dropped what? Equals before. Now hyphen length, open parenthesis, close this. I will now hit on enter. Now let me just bring my cursor here a bit. Now I will now hit on enter again. The next thing I want to do now, I want to actually print. Now to print, I will now bring my cursor here and I'll say print After my print now, double quote, data transformed what successfully. Now I'll close double quote, I'll close this parenthesis, I'll hit on enter, I'll hit on the tab button now, print, open parenthesis, double quote, dropped. Now rows missing, drop rows missing. Now order underscore id. Now I'll give you double column, I'll close double quote, I will now say what, comma, dropped. Now close this parenthesis, I will now hit on enter, I will now hit on the tab button. Let me just come here. Okay, return what, the df, that means the entire data. Now I will now hit on enter, I'll come back here and now say except what, exception. I'll give it an alias of what, of e. Now I'll give it double column, I'll hit on enter, I'll come back here. Now I will now let me print. Now print, what am I printing now? Open parenthesis, now I'll give it f string. Now I'll now say error transforming data. Now I'll give it double column. Now I will now bring out the what, the nested JSON symbol. I will now close it. Now I'll close double quote, I'll close this parenthesis, I'll hit on enter, I'll now hit on the tab button, I'll come back here. Now I'll now return. What am I returning? The what, sorry, return none. Now the next thing I will now do, now I've actually moved my cursor up. Now you can see now those things that we actually printed here, the what, the shape and the what, the columns and everything. Now so we can actually do it for the what, for the transform also. Now let's just come back here. Now like the way we have it here, now let's just come back to the what, to the transform. Now I'll bring my cursor here, I will now say, let me hit on enter again, and I'll say if transformed underscore what, underscore data is not null. I'll give you double column. Oh, sorry about that, I wanted to type something before this. Now let me bring my cursor here, let me hit on enter once again. Now let me say, wanted to say what, transformed underscore data now equals what, let's say transform underscore data, now open parenthesis, raw underscore data, close this parenthesis. Now that's what I actually want to bring out. That means from the extract. Now I will now hit on enter. Now I will now print. Now print. Now what are we printing now? Open parenthesis. Now let's say transformed underscore data. Now I'll now say dot edge. Now open parenthesis, let's say 10, close these two parentheses. Now I'll print again. Now say print. Now open parenthesis, double quote, I'll give it a forward slash, and now say n what, n transformed. Now n transform underscore data, and sorry, n transformed. Now data types. Now I'll give you double column, I'll close double quote. Now I'll close this parenthesis. Now I will now what, hit on enter. I will now hit on the tab button once, and I'll say print. Now open parenthesis, transformed underscore data dot d types. Now I'll close this parenthesis. I'll hit on enter. I'll hit on the tab button once. I will now print. Now print, open parenthesis. Now I'll now say double quote n. Now forward slash. Sorry, this slash should come before n shape. Now I will now say after what transformed. After transform. Now I'll give you double column. I'll close double quote. Now I'll put a comma. Now say transformed underscore what underscore data dot shape. Now close this parenthesis. Now I have to save this. Now there should be something before this now, so that it won't go and give us error when we actually run it. Now I will now hit on enter. Sorry about that. And I'll say what dev. Now save. That's for the what we are trying to save it now. Save underscore what transform. Now transformed underscore data. Now open parenthesis df. Now comma. And now say output. That means we want to save the output now underscore what underscore path. Now close this parenthesis. Close double column. I'll hit on enter. I'll now say try. Now I'll give it double column. I'll hit on enter. I'll hit on the tab button once. I'll now say what df dot to. We are saving it to underscore csv now. We are saving it back as a csv file. Open parenthesis. Output the name. Output underscore what underscore path. Now comma index equals what false. Now I'll close this parenthesis. I'll hit on enter. I'll hit on the tab button once. I'll now print. Now print. Now open parenthesis f double quote. Now say transformed what data. Now saved to. Now double column. Now I'll open this nested JSON. I'll now say output. Now underscore path. Output underscore path. I'll close this nested JSON. I'll close this double quote. I'll close this parenthesis. Now I will now hit on enter. I'll now say except. Now I will now hit on enter. Now I'll now say except what exception. I'll give it an alias of what of e. I'll give it double column. I'll hit on enter. Now for this exception now, I'll hit on the tab button once. Now come back here. I will now say what I'll hit on enter. I'll now say print. What are we printing now? Open parenthesis f string. And now say error. Now saving transformed what data. Now I'll give it double column. I'll now give it open this nested JSON. I'll now say e. Close it now. I'll close double quote. Close this parenthesis. Now let me just close this space now. Now let's continue. Now we are actually done. Now I'll now come back here. I'll now say what let me just hit on the tab button once. I'll now say output underscore path that we actually save it as. Now equals what. Now I'll now come here. Now let me just copy this link, or just let me go up here and copy this link and paste it here. Now let me bring my cursor here. I like this. Now I'll copy it. I'll now come down here. Okay, let me scroll up a bit. Now let me come here. Now I'll just paste it now. Now that is the what I'll now change this to, instead of what, retail underscore order underscore data, now I'll just change it to underscore what, transformed. Now let's say one. Now so this will actually save on my what, on my desktop. So if I said download now, it will go and drop under my download. That means this is how, this is our C directory, this is the user, this is under this, and this is under this. This is the account I actually open on this what, on this system. And on the desktop now, I said desktop's under this, and this is where I want it to drop on my desktop. Now I will now hit on enter. I'll hit on the tab button once again. I'll now say save underscore what, underscore transform underscore transformed underscore data. Now open parentheses. I'll now say transformed underscore data. Now comma. Now say output underscore path. Now I'll close this parenthesis. Now I will now run this. Let's see what we actually have now. Control enter. Let's wait and see what we have. Now let me close this space here now, and let's scroll down and see what we actually did now. You can see now everything was successful. Now data transformed successfully. Now dropped rows, now missing ID. Now it was 0. We don't have anyone that doesn't have what, role ID. Now these are the ones that we actually what have. Now we have the role ID, sorry. Now we have these are the columns that we actually have now. Order ID, date, time. Now order underscore status, the customer ID, the name, the email, the customer segment, the country. Now you can see everything now. So this is the delivery date that we actually transformed. Now you can see this was actually showing that now, because we don't actually have anything there. That's why we have that now. And these are all the data types that we actually have for all the columns now. So you can see everything now. You can see it's working perfectly well. Now the next thing we'll now be doing now, we'll now load it back to our what, to our PostgreSQL. Now after loading it back to our PostgreSQL, we will now automate it with our what, with our Airflow. Now let's actually load our data. Now I don't want it to take much of our time, so that's why I actually prepare the code here now. So let me just emphasize on this code now. We said import pandas as PD, import scicop g2, and import what, scicop g, from scicop g2 import SQL. Now what we are actually using to connect with our what, with our PostgreSQL with our Python is what, is the scicop g2 that we actually use to load our data. Now I will now said what, def load underscore what, data to PostgreSQL. Now these are what we actually want to make use of now. This is a CSV file, and the what, database underscore connection underscore the parameters now, and the table name. Now what this actually says is that we are trying to what, extract a CSV file, and we will read it. Now that's what this actually means. Now it will open and read the what, the data in Python. Now and for this, if df.empty now, so if the data is actually, or if the CSV file is actually what, empty now, so it will not waste much of our time, it will quickly stop. That's why we said if df.empty. Now the warning, the CSV, it will just tell us that what, the CSV file is empty, no data to load. That is what it will actually return. That's what this actually means. Now for this now, df.columns equals what, now the stripe dot what, dot lower for C in the what, df columns. Now what this actually does is that it removes the space and what, and the capital letters. That's what this actually does, so that what, the database will not actually complain when it goes to what, the PostgreSQL. Now what this actually means is that df equals what, df dot where what, where pd not null. That means where we have null now, so it will actually, where we have empties, when we have empty cells there now, it will actually change it to null. So PostgreSQL accepts it. That's what we actually did here. Let me bring my cursor down now. So let's continue now. Now for this now, we said connect equals what, scicop g2 dot connect. Now db underscore connect underscore parameters. Now what this actually does is that it will open our what PostgreSQL and log in into the what the database, just like we are opening the PostgreSQL with our username and what and password. That's what this actually does. Now we now said what create table. Let me bring my cursor down. Now we said create table if not exist. So it will actually create a table if we don't actually have a table named with what we actually want to make use of before in our PostgreSQL. Now and we now said insert. Now let me bring my cursor down. We said what insert here now. Insert into the what the table value. That means each row from the CSV file now is now saved into the database one after the other. That's what this actually entails now. Now for the next one now, we said what select. Let me bring my cursor down. Now we said select. Now we said select what count all from what from it will actually count how many rows we are inside the what the table to be sure of the data that is actually there. So it will actually check for all the rows that we actually have in our what in our data set. That's what this actually what means now. So this was where we it actually what loaded into the PostgreSQL along with the table name that we actually gave it. Now let's scroll down now. Let's scroll down. So after that, we what we close it and we print what we actually closed. We said connection what closed successfully. Now and we said if there is any error now, it should actually what indicate it for us. That's what this actually means now. And this is the part of what we actually what transform now. This is the we're actually linked to it now. So if what this was what we transformed earlier. Now we said what C directory user HP desktop. Now this was the name that we actually give it now. So and these are the details of the connection now. We said host is what local host and the database, that's the database that we actually use. So you can actually use any database of your choice, and these are the what default details that actually comes with your what with your PostgreSQL. So that's the host, this is the user. If you actually change your user in your PostgreSQL now, so that is what you will use here, and this was the password and this is my port. Now after that, I actually gave the table a what a name of retail underscore orders. So and we load it. If I now run this now, so it will actually what run and go in and drop the data in my PostgreSQL. Now let's run this now. Control enter and let's scroll down. Let's see what we have. Now let's scroll down. Now let's see what we actually have now. Let me bring my cursor down. Now you can see now data extracted successfully. Now you can see it now PostgreSQL connection successful and the table name is actually there now. But it's supposed to what bring out the what the data here also, so that it will actually based on what we actually run here now. We said was select all from what from and limit it to 10. That means we want to see the first 10 of the what of the data set. So this will actually indicate that the data has actually dropped in our what in our PostgreSQL. So let's rerun this again. Probably maybe I didn't what switch on my what internet before. Now let's rerun it. Control enter. Now let's scroll down. Now let's scroll down. Now let's see what we actually did. Now let me bring my cursor down. Now you can see now everything is working perfectly well now. Now when you run yours now, sometimes it may actually take some few seconds or a minute plus now, due to it will be what dropping the data rows by row now. So don't panic, kindly wait for it. Now you can see everything is working perfectly well. We've actually what loaded the data successfully into our PostgreSQL. You can see the table is ready, PostgreSQL connection successful, the table is ready and the data successfully loaded into the PostgreSQL table. That's retail underscore orders, and we have about 150,000 rows. You can see it now. So these are all the columns that we actually have now in it. Now let me bring my cursor down, and these are the first 10 that we actually what set out to what to see. So everything is working perfectly well. Now the next thing we will now do now, we will now what automate it with what with Airflow. Now we've actually carried out our what ETL, which is what extract, transform and load. Now the next thing we will now do is that we will now automate it with what with the Airflow. Now before we automate it with Airflow, now let's actually go into our what PostgreSQL now, and let's actually see what we did now. So I'll just bring up my PostgreSQL. I'll open a tab Now I will now say select, let's say select or from. Don't forget the name of the table is what? Retail underscore orders. Now I will now limit this to what? I will limit it to 10, or let's see 5. First 5. I'll put a semicolon. I'll bring my cursor back here. I'll highlight everything. I will now run this now. So let's see what we have. You can see it now. Everything works perfectly well. This is the order ID, order date, order time, order date time. Now let me move my cursor down. Order status, the complete ID, customer ID, customer name, customer email, customer segments, country, customer country, customer city, product ID, and so on. You can see everything now. So everything is actually working perfectly well now. And where we have the none before now, or the not now, it has actually changed to what? To null. Now you can see it now. So everything works perfectly well now. Now let's actually go back into our what? Into our Jupyter notebook, and let's what? Automate it with Airflow. Now let me actually bring my cursor down now to the what? To the to the dark code. Now let me bring my cursor down to the dark code now. Let me bring my cursor down. Now let me scroll up gently. I've actually prepared the dark code now. Now this is the dark code now. We said what? From Airflow import dark from Airflow dot operators. These are the libraries that we actually what? Import now. And we are bringing the data from the what? From the PostgreSQL. That's why we are making use of the what? Scikop G2. Now let me bring my cursor down now so that we can actually what? Automate it with Python. I've actually prepared the code also. I don't want it to take much of the time also. Now let me bring my cursor down. Now we said what? From Airflow import DAG, and from Airflow dot operators dot Python import what? Python operator. Now these are what we actually what? Import now. These pandas help us read the what? The CSV file, while the Scikop G2 help us what? Connect to the PostgreSQL, because we are actually bringing the data from the PostgreSQL. And for this SQL now, it actually what? Help us build the SQL query safely. That's what we actually did here. And for this now, we now said what? Now this is the what? The def argument. Now we said what? The owner should be what? Retail underscore ETL underscore team. And the what? The retry should be once. And retry underscore delay, we actually gave it what? 3 minutes. Now this is the path to the what? To the data set now. And this was the path to the what? The transformed one. Now, and these are the details that we actually use to connect with our what? With our PostgreSQL. Now you can see database underscore connect underscore parameters. Now we said the host is what? Postgres, and the database is what? Is Airflow. Now this database now, you may be surprised that the database that I actually used in my what? When we are loading into the PostgreSQL was different from this. Reason why was that in our what? Docker compose what? .yaml now. So what we actually use there, that is what we will actually what? Bring up here. Now the user we actually used there was what? Was progress. And for the what? Sorry, in the database that we actually used there was what? Airflow. So that is what we actually use when we are writing our what? DAG code. And the password that we used there was what? Was Postgres, and the port was what? 5432. So that is what we actually use here. Now when you are running yours now, don't actually make that mistake. Now for the table now, we said the table is what? Retail underscore orders, and this is it now. We said this is the extract what? Extract part now. We said it is what? C directory user HP. Now this is the folder where we have our what? Our details of our Airflow as a whole, the DAG, the data set, and this is what? This is it now. And this is the original data set of it. So and we gave it what? The link, and this actually read our what? Our CSV file. Now we now said extract successful, the rows and the column. Now let's continue. Now we said what? Dev extract underscore data. Now this, what this actually entails is that we confirm that what? The CSV is actually what? Here in this what? Link that we actually provided, and we read it and check how many rows and columns are there, and we return the file path. So the next task that we actually carried out was what? Was the transform underscore data. Now let me bring my cursor down now. Now for this transform underscore data, now we now what clean the data, we fix the numbers so that it can actually becomes what real numbers, and we fix the date column so that it can actually become what real date. That was what we actually did here. And we remove the bad rows now, where we have the missing order underscore id, and we save the what the cleaned to a new csv file. That was what we actually did for each and for this what transform underscore data. That was what we actually did here. And after that, we now what we now load it. Now let me actually emphasize on something. Now this ti dot what scom underscore pool, now what this actually means is that you should go and what collect the previous tax returned. That was the meaning of this. Now and the next one that we actually did, now let me bring my cursor down very well again. Now we now load it. Now we now take the clean csv and push it into the database. It creates a table automatically if it doesn't what exist. Now and then we'll clear the old data first, that means truncate it, then insert the new data. That was what we actually did here. Now why we actually what truncate is that it ensures that the table always contains fresh daily what data and not any duplicate. That was the reason why we actually what truncate. Now after that, we now what verify. Let me bring my cursor down. So that was the whole of this process. We commit and we close also here. After that, we now set up our dag. Now we said our dag should be what retail. That was the name we actually give it. Now retail underscore orders underscore etl underscore postgres. And for the description, we say retail orders what etl with python plus batch verification. That means we actually include what batch verification in it also. And we said what default underscore args. So you can see now. So the start date for the running time is what 1st of December 2025. The start date should equals what date time 1st of December 2025, and the schedule underscore interval should be at what at the daily basis. Now the cash up is now false. So these are the tags that we actually give it now. So this is for the what extract, and this for the transform, this for the loop, and this is for the verify. That's what batch operator. So this will actually display the first 5 of our of our entire table. You can see it here now. So if this doesn't display it there now, so what we did was not actually correct. And all these 4 processes will actually display green so that we can know that what we did was right. So this was the password that we actually put in our .mv. There is a file in our airflow folder that we said .mv. So this was the password that we used there. Now let me scroll down now. So you can see these are the 4 boxes that it will actually display in our airflow. So let me highlight everything now and let me copy it. Now I will now go to my I'll bring up my Visual Studio Code. Once it's actually come up, now let's wait for it. It's still loading. So I will now hit on this folder now. Once it come up now, let me hit on this material folder. So it has come up. Now I will now right click on this tag. I'll hit on a new file. Now I'll now give it the name that we saw earlier. That's retail underscore orders. Now underscore etl underscore postgres. Now let me say underscore batch. You can actually give it any name of your choice. .py. So this py, we actually want to make it a Python file. I'll hit on enter. I'll now come here now. I'll now paste it. So I've actually pasted the entire dark code now. So you can see everything now. And you can also create a file here and type it in your Visual Studio Code. Any one of your choice. So I'll now hit on Ctrl S now. I'll actually save this now. I've saved it. Now I'll bring up my Docker now. Let's wait for the Docker to come up. Now the Docker have actually come up now. I will now minimize this now. I will now bring up I'll open a new tab now. I'll bring up a new tab. Now the next thing, I will now come here. I will now bring up I'll open my Airflow UI now. That's localhost. Now just hit on this now. So let's wait for it to actually come up now. So it has actually come up. So let's just refresh the whole process. Now and let's hit on the DAGs now. It will list out all the DAGs for us now. So let's come here and let's bring up the what was it called now? That's the retail. Now, okay, let's hit on it. So you can see it now, everything is working perfectly well. Now if I hit on this word schedule now, so you can see, so it will trigger it and it will run on what, on a daily basis. Now let's come to this graph now. Let's see what we are actually seeing the other time. You can see the extract, the transform, the load, and also the what, the verify. Now once this actually come up with green now, so is not actually coming up. Oh, there's something that we need to do now. We have to go to our what, our folder, and drop the data set there. So the folder of our entire what, airflow. Now let's actually go there. Now this is the data set. Now I will just come here. I will now hit on copy now, or let me just bring my cursor here. Let me just hit on it. I will just say Ctrl C, copy. I will now come to my what, to where I have the what, the folder. Now you can see it's under my user now. So this is the folder. Now hit on the folder. So I'll hit on this DAG. Now I will now come to this data set. Now I will now come to this data. Now I'll open it. So these are the previous one. Now I will just come here. I will just paste it now. So you can see it now, retail underscore orders underscore what, underscore data. So we have it now. So let's actually go to our what, to our airflow back, and let's what, trigger the DAG now. So to do that, I'll come back here now. I will now scroll up. So I will now hit on the what, the DAG now. So let's wait for it to actually come up now. So it must actually show us what, a green now. So you can see now this was actually successful. Extract underscore what, tax. So this is also showing a green. Now transform underscore tax. Now let's wait for the load and also the verify. So it must show a tick green now. So if you hit here now, and if I scroll up, if I come to this log now, so you can see now everything what we actually indicate it was actually successful. Now extract successfully, and what the rows are, what we actually extract was 150,000. You can see it now, and these are the columns that we actually have. Now if I bring my cursor down here now, you see all the columns that we actually what, extracted based on what we write in our DAG now. So if I collapse this now, so we are done with this. Now the next one is what, we just come back to this what, graph again. Now we'll now come to this what, transform. Now I will now hit on this log now, so we will see what is actually logged now. So you can see the log of it now. So everything was actually successful. Now it was a successful one. Now what we transformed now, you can see transformed successfully, and rows after the transformation was still what, 150,000. So you can see all the details of the what, of the transform now. Now if I come back here now, I will now, let's see whether the what, the load is still what, running. So this was successful, this was successful, this is yet to run at all, and this was running. So let's wait for it to actually run now. Now you can see now the load also, it has actually run successfully now. Now let me what, hit on it now. Let's scroll up, let's come back to this log. Now you can see it now. So what we actually load was what, was successful. Now let me bring my cursor down a bit. Now let me what, collapse this, and you can see it now. So connected to PostgreSQL and load was successfully, 150,000 rows now inserted. So you can see it. Now let's actually come to the SCOM now. So we don't have anything under the SCOM here. Now let's come back here. So let's hit on this verify now, and let's hit on this log now. So you can see it now. It actually log our what, our data. So let me scroll down. It's still loading now. So this is what, these are the columns that we actually have. Now if I hit on this now, so now let me bring my cursor down. So it's supposed to display about first five of the what, of the data set. Now let me scroll down, let's see what is happening. Now it's not displaying it. Let's clear this tax now. Let's clear it, and let's let's clear it here now. We'll now rerun it back again. So let's bring my cursor down. Let's come back here and let's hit on this graph now. So okay, we are on it now. Let's read what, let's trigger this DAG again. Let's come up, let's go to the graph. I will now come back here now. I will now hit on okay. It's still okay. This was successful, queued. Now let's wait for it running. So let's wait for it now. Now if it's not actually coming up now, so we'll have to what, refresh our what, our airflow, and we'll run it so it will actually come up, since it's actually displaying green for us here. So we have to see it there. So the first five that we actually put in our what, in our DAG code. Now everything is actually successful. Now let me hit on it again and let's see it now. Let's come to our log. Now you can see it now. These are the order ID. Now this was how it's supposed to display it before. These are our order ID, order date, order underscore date time. Let me bring my cursor down now. Now you can see everything now. So everything is actually working perfectly well. Now let's scroll down. So you can see everything now. You can see all the columns and their data now. So we've actually verified with our what? With our batch what? Batch workflow. Now let's come down here and let's see the what? The post task execution now. So everything was actually what? Successful. So that is it now. You can see the SCOM. So it actually returns what? Value. So that is it now. That will be all for this lesson. See you in the next lesson. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.